back here with a familiar face. This is Sarang. I think you've been on the channel, like, this is like your, what, 4th time? Because we did your C55 AMG,
correct,
your Mini Cooper S, and your 330 CI ZHP.
Yep.
Yeah, so 4th time. This guy, like me, likes to go through cars quite a lot.
Yep.
And so now we're in his 2004 Volkswagen Mark IV Golf R32. This car was never really on my radar, so to speak, but I've always been curious about it. It was the first Golf, I believe, to come with all-wheel drive. It's got a VR6 engine, 6-speed manual. Surprisingly, like, these cars have held their value really, really well over time, which is like rare for a Volkswagen. What drew you to this car exactly?
Yeah, good question. So this was at a time where, like, I was trying to get rid of the ZHP.
Right.
And I was like going through a bunch of different cars on Craigslist. This is really before the popularity of the R32 blew up about a year and a half ago. I had a bunch of Craigslist tabs open of different searches, and one of them randomly refreshed for the R32, and this car popped up, and I went and checked it out, and I was like, all right, like, I like it. I think it'll be fun to, like, you know, own for a little bit.
Sure.
As time went on, like, it turned out that it needed a lot of work, as these cars do.
Most Volkswagens are like that.
Exactly. And luckily at the time, I also still had my Golf R. You know, I was still able to daily drive that while I was working on this. So the car itself is, you know, a little deviation from stock. It has coilovers, it has a cold air intake, I believe some sort of tune. You know, the owner who sold it to me didn't mention it. We threw it on the dyno and it made 230 wheel.
They're only rated at 240 crank, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's something going on, and you know, that dyno's known for reading higher than normal.
Okay,
but
so that could be it too.
we also were dyning Evos that have been dynoed on other dynos before, and, you know, I did the math, and it comes out to something like 270 crank.
Interesting.
Other than that, yeah, it's a short shift kit from HPA. It has a Panzer plate, you know, to protect the oil pan, the KW V2s.
V2s, okay.
Yeah, and other than that, yeah, it's pretty much stock. I mean, there's some, like, daily driver things that I had to do, like a new head unit. I got the VX tuning, xenon headlights.
Yeah, the car feels relatively modern with what you've done to it. So before we talk about the car more, let's push it a little bit, see how it does. We'll turn ESP off. Plenty of traction, all-wheel drive, Haldex system. As you were mentioning, you know, the third gear has a little bit of a synchro issue, so we'll just drive around that.
Yeah, these cars don't like to be shifted too quickly into third.
Ooh, even if I try to shift slow, it still does that. I'll just keep it in third. How about that?
Yeah, you should be alright.
Little bit of power on understeer coming out of corners. It's more of a uphill car, you know?
Yeah.
And I say that for quite a lot of cars, but for this one I really mean it. Like, going downhill, the brakes, they just don't have a lot of bite, so you do have to get quite far into the brake pedal to get stopping power out of it.
Yeah, the other problem is, like, this VR6 motor weighs a lot, and it's a lot of weight up front.
It's
so
like over the front axle, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, braking feel, it leaves a little bit to be desired, but the suspension I actually really like. These are KW V2s, you said, which are one-way adjustable, like combined compression and rebound. And you said you had it on full soft right now.
Full soft, daily driver / grandpa mode.
Grandpa mode, nice. I think my favorite part of the car right now is just the sound, like that classic VR6, like Wookiee burble. This had an MSRP of what, like 35, 40? I
think it was like right under 30.
Right under 30.
It was like 29.1 or something like that back in 2004.
So not too far off from like a STI.
Yeah, I think they're roughly about the same.
I think the STI had just come out for the US at that time. It was the Blob, I want to say, generation. Way more boy racer looking car, like that huge wing and all that. Granted, it had a lot more power, like 300 horsepower, and a much more sophisticated, symmetric all-wheel drive system. But this car it's so much nicer on the inside. I've driven quite a few different Subarus of that era, like just not good interiors, like squeaks and rattles and things like that.
Yeah, and Volkswagen is kind of stuck to that theme, you know, with every R model afterwards, right? They've gone more for like the premium market than like the all-out performance market. Right.
that 240, wheel horsepower number that you quoted, I feel like it makes that at all RPMs. Like, it doesn't really have a weak spot.
Yeah, I mean, we can include a dynograph in this video too.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty much like the BMW motor, like the NA BMW motors, where it's just like it makes torque and then just holds it the entire power band.
Very, very linear. It revs out all the way to 6,500.
Yeah, and it's still pulling at the top end.
Yeah, so in third gear here, we're at 4,000 RPMs, 5,000, 55, 6, and that's red line. I mean, it just pulls so steadily. So let's talk about the all-wheel drive system. It is a Haldex system. I think Volkswagen calls it the 4Motion or something like that back then. It's really just a front-wheel drive setup, so most of the time it actually sends all of the power to the front axle, but whenever it detects slip at the rear axle, it'll send up to 50% of the torque to the back, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct, yep.
Essentially what that means is you're not going to ever get this car to power oversteer. It's more for traction than anything else.
Yeah, and you can get like race Haldex controllers to be more aggressive when it sends power to the back wheels.
Okay. It's a performance car, but not to the same extent as some of those other like hot hatches and things like that.
Right.
This is more of a grown-up car. Like there's no crazy scoops or vents or wings on the outside of the car. It looks very, very understated, but in like a nice way, especially in this blue color. It's got a good look to it. It's got an aggressive stance without all the extra aero flair.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that. Like, it gets attention from like people you would least expect. I showed my aunt like a picture of the car, and she was like, "Wow, I really like those wheels." And like, she knows nothing about cars, but she was like, there was something that drew her in.
It's just a generally pleasing design, I would say.
Right.
Hydraulic steering, pretty good feedback. A little bit maybe lighter than I would like. It doesn't load up in the corners as well. Overall, it feels neutral here in the canyons where we're not pushing it to the absolute limit. When I was driving earlier, I was experimenting with it. You can get it to power understeer quite easily if you are too abrupt with the throttle on corner exit. No problems on the uphill. Pulls pretty strong. Let's try this corner in a second, actually.
I think the coilers need to be a little bit stiffer.
A little bit. I think there's a little bit too much body motion right now at full soft. But that being said, it rides really nice.
Yeah, about, let me think about this exactly.
How did that happen?
Oh my god.
It bottomed out. Yikes.
That sucks. I did like the clutch, the flywheel, a new throwout bearing.
Yeah.
And then with these cars, there's an issue with like the timing chain guides. They're plastic and they break over time.
So like the BMW 5 Series. Okay. But
luckily, and same with like, I believe like the, those, what is it, the twin turbo S4s?
Oh, really?
Or the RS4, I think, has that problem. Except for that, you have to pull the motor out. For this, like, if you drop the transmission, you can get access to like the timing chain cover and the guides. So I just did all that at once, just preventative. It's a very easy car to work on. I try to do most of it myself, everything except the clutch and the timing chains, just because like I don't have the time or space for that.
Right. You can find Mark IV GTIs, even the VR6 models, for dirt cheap, like under $5,000. But these are still, I don't think I've seen one less than like low teens.
Exactly, like high mileage cars that are well maintained are going low teens, and then you've seen examples that go all the way up to like 40,000 for low
super
mileage,
low miles.
Clean, not even fully stock car, but just clean.
And that's over MSRP.
Yeah, which is insane. But I think I think two factors come at play here. Like one is the nostalgia factor that all the late '90s and early 2000 cars are getting right now.
Yeah.
People like us, we grew up, like we can finally afford these kind of things.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is like the driving experience, right? Like if you drive this, and then like if you drove like my Mark 6 Golf R that I had, it was just like, to me, like even though that car's faster, this car felt more engaging.
It's more raw.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. Another thing, and like this is just me nitpicking, is like I think these cars are actually have better interiors than the newer Golfs.
I think you're right.
Sorry to interrupt, but like I think like cost cutting eventually kicked in, but like this has like leather on the door panels with soft touch plastics everywhere.
Yeah, you're right. So I've driven like Mark 5, 6, and 7 GTIs and Golf Rs and all that stuff. There's definitely some cost-cutting measures. Like this right here is better than in a Mark 7 Golf. Like in the Mark 7, it's kind of it's still soft touch, but it's like scratchy.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is like these seats, right? Like these seats only came in the R32, whereas you know, we can fact check this after we do this video. But like I think in like the new Golf Rs, it's just like the same
I'm pretty sure you
GTI
get the same seats. You're right. And speaking of these seats, I forgot to mention these are ridiculously bolstered seats for a bone stock car. Like this has more side bolstering than my Sparko bucket seat that I used to have in the S2000. I mean, Golfs have always had a sweet spot for me in terms of just that fine balance of driving dynamics and fun to drive factor, along with the practicality of having a hatch with a back seat and having a nice interior, good ride quality, like no squeaks and rattles really or wind noise. It's just that perfect balance at canyon speeds like 7 to 8 tenths, where you're not really stressing out the front end of the front axle. It actually, if it's lively, you get a lot of body motion, it's good steering feel. It's a lot of fun. You can really push it. So
yeah, it's surprising they didn't fix that on the newer Golfs, right? Like they have like a lot less weight up front.
Yeah.
So they could build a more balanced car, but let's see what the Mark 8 brings.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Mark 8.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. Whatever they bring.
Yeah. So if you like this video, guys, please comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanking Thanks again, Sarang, for letting me drive the car. And see you guys next time.
Cool.